From the remnants of his mother's jacket and a couple of ping pong balls, Jim Henson would put the rudimentary puppet on his hand and turn it to face himself. While the character began as a side character on Jim Henson's first show, Sam and Friends, airing on local television, the popularity of both Kermit and Jim Henson would grow as they were featured in commercials and specials across network television.
Ladies and gentlemen, introducing the new... Hold it. Wait a minute, you can't come shouting in here.
These appearances would grow both the cast of the Muppets and the cast of performers, as Muppets Inc. became a global phenomenon. The Muppets reached national fame in 1969 with Sesame Street, which proved both Jim Henson's experiment with the Muppets, along with paying the bills. Henson believed that Muppets were much more than just a tool to teach children how to read and write. Jim believed that his Muppets were for anyone of all ages. Jim Henson wanted a show, a Muppet show.
This is what we call a Muppet Show.
This led to the creation of two TV specials, The Muppets Valentine's Show and The Muppets Sex and Violence. Jim Henson was desperately trying to break out of this idea that Muppets were just for children, but after both TV specials were flops, no networks wanted to fund The Muppet Show.
Oh, gee, thanks.
This is not going to be just another cute puppet show.
The Muppets did have a bit on SNL every week, but it was a contentious weekly production, with one of the show's writers saying, "I won't write for felt." In a move of desperation, Henson pitched his idea to a British commercial station called ATV, led by Lou Grade. It was risky, since independent, local, and public networks would need to pick up individual episodes for distribution, but at this point, it was better than nothing. In 1976, The Muppet Show would begin taping in the UK. The first few episodes were rough, but after some growing pains, the show became a huge hit on both sides of the pond. The Muppet Show would run for 5 seasons, with Jim Henson deciding to end the show on a high note rather than letting it overstay its welcome. It's no wonder why then, in 1979, Henson would decide to tell this story with their very first theatrically released movie. The Muppets movie would tell the fantastical story of how the Muppets came together. Kermit, feeling inspired to spread joy at dancing throughout the world, would try to make it to Hollywood to try out. Along the way, they would meet Fozzie, Gonzo, Miss Piggy, and other Muppets that made up the show the audiences already knew and loved. Jim Henson, Frank Oz, and the rest of the crew were still unproven in their abilities to bring the story to the silver screen, so it was decided that James Frawley would direct the film. Frawley was not thrilled about this, which led to a bit of a rocky production. This would be the only Muppets movie produced in this era that was not directed by either Jim Henson or Frank Oz. The Muppets movie received generally positive reviews and made its money back in spades. On a budget of $8 million, the Muppets movie raked in over $65 million in just the United States and Canada alone. The Muppets were a hit, and Jim Henson and crew finally succeeded in what they set out to do.
We've done just what we set out to do. Thanks to the lovers, the dreamers, and you.
When we think about the moving right along scene from the Muppet movie, it's easy to be caught up in the energy of the song and the comedic antics of Kermit and Fozzie. But behind all that fun is some incredible technical innovation, especially in how they filmed the scene with real locations and made it look like Fozzie was actually driving the car. First, it's important to note that the filmmakers did not rely on CGI or any complex visual effects to create this scene.
Opportunity knocks once, let's reach out and grab it.
Yeah!
Together we'll nab it.
We'll hitchhike, bus, or yellow cabin.
Cabot?
Moving right along.
They shot on real roads, which meant the puppeteers had to figure out how to operate the Muppets in a moving car. This is where things get really impressive from a puppetry standpoint. For this sequence, the filmmakers used a modified car where both Jim Henson as Kermit and Frank Oz as Fozzie were positioned beneath a false floor. This setup allowed them to move the characters within the car while keeping the puppeteers out of view. This illusion of Fozzie driving the car was achieved through clever puppetry and camera angles. Fozzie's hands were placed on the steering wheel in a way that made it appear as though he was the one driving, even though Jim Henson's hands were operating Kermit and the actual steering was handled by another team member. The car itself was rigged with special controls hidden in the trunk so that the car could appear to be in motion as the puppeteers operated Kermit and Fozzie. This was necessary to keep up the illusion that the car was actually driving. Meanwhile, the puppeteers had to coordinate their movements to match the motion of the car, so you'd see Fozzie's hands on the wheel while Kermit played the banjo, all while they were singing the song. The car's movement was often matched to the rhythm of the song, so it didn't just look like they were driving, it felt like they were really on the move. The filmmakers had to carefully choose camera angles to make sure the illusion held up. Wide shots often show the car driving through the landscape, giving us a sense of realism and showing how the Muppets interact with the real world. But when it comes to close-ups, the filmmaker used smart framing to keep the puppeteers hidden while focusing on the characters. You'll notice how the camera keeps the focus on Fozzie and Kermit, especially when Fozzie's hands are on the wheel. This creates the illusion that he's driving while also making it clear that both characters are fully engaged in the action. The puppeteers also had to carefully synchronize the movements of Fozzie's mouth and Kermit's expressions to the lyrics of the song. Since the vocals were pre-recorded, they had to time each line of dialogue and song perfectly with the puppets' lip movements. With Fozzie driving, this added an extra layer of complexity to the performance. Because as Fozzie's hands are on the wheel, his face has to match the rhythm of the song while also looking believable as he drives.
Stars with flashy cars and lights with the top down.
We're storming the big town.
Yeah, storm is right. Should it be snowing?
No, I don't think so.
Moving right along.
This sequence is a triumph of puppetry and filmmaking, demonstrating the lengths the Muppets team went to make sure the characters felt alive. From real locations to precise hand placement and clever rigs, this scene highlights the creativity that Jim Henson and his team brought to the table.
The late 70s were a time of transition. America was coming out of Vietnam, Watergate had shattered trust in the government, and the economy was struggling. People were looking for something to believe in, something optimistic. Enter Kermit the Frog, banjo in hand, singing Rainbow Connection.
There's so many songs about rainbows.
The song wasn't just a catchy tune, it was an anthem of hope, speaking to a generation trying to find meaning in a chaotic world. The Muppets, with their DIY misfit energy, embodied the idea that anyone, no matter how odd, could follow their dreams and find success. Rainbow Connection wasn't just a hit, it became one of the most recognizable songs of the 20th century. It was nominated for an Oscar, covered by everyone from Willie Nelson to Casey Musgraves, and even played at Jim Henson's memorial service. Meanwhile, Movin' Right Along captured the era's restless energy, a song about hitting the road and figuring out things along the way, which fit perfectly with a generation still searching for its place in a changing world. The 1970s also saw the rise of blockbuster filmmaking thanks to Jaws and Star Wars. George Lucas, Jim Henson, and other visionary filmmakers were redefining what was possible on screen. The Muppet movie proved that puppetry wasn't just for television, it could be cinematic. It pioneered new effects like Kermit riding a bicycle without visible strings, and it was setting a standard for practical effects. This directly influenced films like Star Wars, where Frank Oz, one of the key Muppet performers, brought Yoda to life, giving this Jedi Master the same expressive, heartfelt presence as a Muppet. And let's talk about Jurassic Park. That movie is often seen as a CGI breakthrough, but what made it work? Animatronics. The lessons learned from the Muppet movie carried over into how Hollywood mixed practical and digital effects to create believable creatures. Since the Muppet movie, puppetry has remained a vital part of film and TV. From Labyrinth to The Dark Crystal, from Avenue Q to The Mandalorian's Grogu, the spirit of what Henson accomplished in 1979 lives on. Even horror films like Child's Play and the Five Nights at Freddy's movie owe something to the Muppet movie. The idea that puppets and animatronics could be more than just props, and that they can carry emotion, and yes, even terror. So next time you watch a movie with a puppet, animatronic, or practical effect that somehow feel real, tip your hat to Kermit and Company. They paved the way, one banjo chord at a